Alright, today we're going to focus on the long hook serve and how to execute it effectively. The first key point, you need a larger backswing. Pull your arm back further. Engage your shoulder and elbow in the backswing. This is a crucial first point. You must pull back your shoulder and elbow. Many players make their contact too far in front. They don't use a proper backswing to generate power, resulting in the racket being too close to the ball before contact. This leaves no room to accelerate, resulting in a long serve that's not long enough and a short serve with neither speed nor spin. So, to master the hook serve, the most critical first step is to open up your shoulder and elbow for a full backswing. This is a crucial first point. Second, there are two main types of hook serves we'll discuss. For the topspin-sidespin hook serve, the brushing action is just like a loop. Think of it as a mini loop. Making sure to hook your wrist. The reason many players struggle with the topspin-sidespin hook serve is because their stance is too high and they hold the racket too high. Think about your loop. A flat, horizontal swing isn't a loop. You must brush the ball from low to high and forward to generate strong topspin. The same principle applies here. So, if your hook serve is weak, it's likely because your stance is too upright. I've seen many students serve this way. The result is a ball with no spin, no kick off the bounce, and a high trajectory. A high arc basically negates the effect of the spin. So how do we generate heavy spin? Just like a loop, start your backswing low and brush upwards. That's how you make the ball spin. So, during your swing, your contact point should be low, in front of your core. Contact the ball here and brush upwards to get that spinny, kicking serve. If you don't, your brushing direction is incorrect. Many players just push the ball forward or chop downwards. This results in a serve that's mostly backspin, not the topspin-sidespin you're aiming for. To create topspin-sidespin, the contact point must be low. You have to brush up from that low point. That's the key to a true topspin-sidespin serve. Your first objective right now, focus on getting that contact point lower. Even without a full toss, just practice brushing up from this low point. If your opponent tries to push it, the ball will pop up. That's how you know you've got a pure, kicking topspin-sidespin. If you contact the ball with your hand held high, you will never generate proper topspin-sidespin. This is a very common issue I see with my students. Let's use a clock face analogy. For both penhold and shakehand, imagine the bottom of the ball is 6 o'clock. For a topspin-sidespin serve, you must contact the ball around 6 o'clock and brush towards 9 or 10 o'clock. That's your topspin-sidespin motion. Start by practicing just that. Focus on practicing this brushing action first. Get the feel for the correct direction of force, from contacting the ball to brushing through it. Once you have the correct spin direction, it's all about acceleration. The problem I see is that most players are just pushing flat or chopping down on the ball, which will never produce a quality topspin-sidespin serve. With the hook serve, the topspin-sidespin variation is far more threatening than the backspin one. That's why your contact point must be low, brushing from 6 o'clock up towards 9 o'clock. Remember, the direction of your brush has to start at the 6 o'clock position on the ball. Too many players are contacting the ball at the 3 o'clock position and then chopping down or pushing forward. That's incorrect. Now for the second important element. Do you feel like you can't generate enough power into your brush? You might say, I feel like I have the motion, but my serve isn't fast and doesn't kick. This is because your brush isn't sharp enough. Here's the first fix. Before you brush the ball, your wrist must be dropped down. It's just like preparing for a loop. That's a perfect analogy. By dropping the wrist, you create the potential for a powerful brush. If your wrist is already cocked upwards, you can't brush the ball. You can only push it. So, for the topspin-sidespin hook serve, you must consciously keep that wrist dropped right up until the moment of contact. Then, brush upwards on contact. This will ensure you get maximum friction on the ball. Many players have their wrist angle wrong at contact. They start open and then close it. The correct motion is to first drop the wrist, then snap it forward and up. Now the ball has real spin. First drop, then snap the wrist. You have to fully commit to that wrist snap. The second key point: many players perform the contact itself too slowly. Let's say we want to serve a fast, long serve. At the moment of contact for a long serve, a crucial point is the follow-through of your forearm. Instead of accelerating through the ball, you're either just grazing it or pushing it. There needs to be an explosive brushing action right at contact. This brushing motion must be fast. But what do we often see? We see this, a slow motion, instead of this, a fast, sharp motion. Those are two completely different speeds. So why does that slower motion happen? Primarily, it's because you're focusing too much on just brushing the ball. For a long serve, pure friction isn't enough. No matter how much spin you put on a long serve, if it doesn't have speed, it's not effective. Even with heavy spin, if your opponent has time to swing, the spin from your small serving motion is nothing compared to their powerful loop. It just won't be a threat. That's the first reason. And the second reason? It's that at the moment of contact, many players are far too tense. When your arm is stiff, your swing will be one constant speed. When I do my backswing, my arm and hand are completely relaxed. Then, the action at contact is sudden and explosive. You have to create that difference in speed. Look, you can't be stiff. If you're stiff, your motion will be slow. The key is relaxation. Relax your shoulder, your elbow, and your forearm. Watch. Relax, then accelerate. That's how you generate real speed on the ball. So, during your backswing phase, the entire motion must be relaxed. And I mean very relaxed. Keep your shoulder, elbow, and forearm loose. Then, from the start of your forward swing to the contact, channel all that acceleration into that single instant of contact. You have to create that contrast between a slow backswing and a fast contact. That's what makes the serve dangerous. It will catch your opponent off guard. Otherwise, all of your serves will be at a constant, predictable speed. This is the quality of serve many players produce. It's easy for the opponent to read and attack. Remember, relax, then accelerate. Watch the contrast in my motion, relax, then accelerate. This applies to penhold as well, relax, then accelerate. That acceleration at contact must create a speed differential with your initial backswing. Your backswing needs to be slow and deliberate. Your forward swing into the ball must be fast. That's how you generate explosive power. What I just demonstrated was topspin-sidespin. A backspin serve requires a downward brushing motion. So, why does the hook serve often have too high of a trajectory? It's because your contact point is too high. When you brush upwards from a high point, the arc will naturally be high. So how do we fix this? Lower your contact point. And the second thing? You must stop your motion immediately after contact. This is called braking. If you don't brake, the trajectory will be high. Watch the trajectory with proper braking. Whether I'm serving short or long, I can keep the arc low. It's critical that you prepare to brake your motion right as you make contact. The reason many players have a high arc when practicing this serve is firstly, their contact point is too high. Brushing up from there just sends the ball even higher. The second reason, even if they start low, is that their upward follow-through is too exaggerated. And as a result, the trajectory is too high. You have to break the motion immediately. This is absolutely vital. Stop the motion right here. Following through too far upwards will always result in a high arc. It also makes it easy for your opponent to read that it's a topspin-sidespin serve. You have to be abrupt. For example, if I start at 6 o'clock, I stop my motion at 3 o'clock. By stopping the motion at this point, I can keep the trajectory nice and low. Don't continue following through all the way up towards 12 o'clock. That will naturally lift the ball's arc too high. Second point, when serving a short hook serve, many players hit the ball into the net. This happens because your contact point is too far out in front. I just made that mistake on a couple of serves myself. It's the exact same issue. For the hook serve, because the topspin-sidespin has a strong kicking effect, your first bounce needs to be around the center line of your side of the table. Watch. Serve the hook so it bounces around the center line of your side. If you're serving long to the end line, the first bounce should still be near your own end line, just like a standard pendulum serve. For a long serve, the first bounce is near the end line. For a short serve, the first bounce is near the center line. The placement is different than for a pendulum serve. For a short pendulum serve, the first bounce needs to be a bit closer to the net. But for the hook serve, because you're imparting topspin, if the first bounce is too close to the net, the ball will go down into the net. So, aim for that first bounce to be around your table center line for the hook serve. Otherwise, if that first bounce is too close to the net, it'll go straight into the net. So, let's move that first bounce point back a little. This makes finding the right placement much easier. Okay, how do we prevent the opponent from reading the spin? The basic topspin-sidespin hook serve uses a relatively vertical racket face brushing upwards. This is a very obvious topspin-sidespin motion, isn't it? Look, you drop the wrist, then hook up. That hook motion is clearly topspin. But if I serve like that, it's too easy to read. So, after you make contact with the ball, add a slight downward follow-through. I guarantee most players will watch that final part of your motion. They won't be watching the actual contact. Their eyes will follow your deceptive follow-through. You'll completely fool them. However, if your motion stops right after contact like this, most players will be able to identify it as topspin-sidespin. Over 90% of players will read it correctly. And if they correctly identify it as topspin, they will attack it directly. In that case, your serve loses all its threat. That's why after you serve, you must add a deceptive, fake follow-through. By doing this, any hesitation from your opponent on their receive will result in a poor quality return. This will create a perfect opportunity for you to launch a strong third ball attack.